Hi bead friends, I'm back with a new tutorial after a long pause. I was on maternity leave, I had a beautiful baby girl, and I haven't actually found the time to record any of the tutorials. My mind and my hands have been busy with new projects, but I just got never around to recording any new tutorials. But I hope to be back this year with many more tutorials to come. This will be the first of many, I hope. So today we are going to continue our journey in the Miyuki world, and we're going to learn how to make this bracelet that I've called Ipazia, which is inspired by the mathematician Ipazia of Alessandria, which is what is the first known feminine woman mathematician in the world. And we will be creating these components, square components, using peyote, circular peyote and herringbone stitch. So we will be making these little squares, and then we will be stitching them together to make the bracelet. And then the next tutorial, I can already show you, will be to make the earrings that go with the bracelet. Here they are. Again, they will be called Ipazia earrings. This is a version in the carnival colors, as I've called them, because they're very colorful, and I will probably make the earrings and the bracelet in these colors so that it will be easy to see the colors on video. So let me show you, because I've made quite a few of these color components. The first one is I've called it Forest, because it is inspired to the colors of the forest and of autumn. Then I've made another set using our new Delica 11 Miyuki in the Starry Night collection, because they are inspired by the winter nights here in Milan, so they're kind of dreary and foggy, and they're beautiful colors. And then there's another version with the royal colors, with the semi-precious stones in the lapis lazuli and the rubies and the green from the emeralds, and it just pops. And then last but not least, there's the version with the mocha mousse, which is the new color for 2025, and it's a color that I have to say is not really in my color scheme. Let's say I don't tend to use a neutral color, so it was definitely a challenge coming up with the color scheme, sorry. And I've added this forest green, opaque, and antique pink, and I think it really helps it give it definition and make it special, let's say. It's kind of a neutral color scheme, so again, it's not exactly in my colors as usual, but it's also nice to break out of your color schemes and try something new. So I really like it, I have to say. So for today's project, you will need KO thread and nylon. I've used the white. Then you will need scissors, size 10 needles. I'm using pony needle beads, and I love them. You will need beeswax for your thread, definitely. I will be using my Thread Heaven, but unfortunately they don't produce this anymore, so since it's not available, we've substituted with the beeswax that we carry in our store, and I have to say it does the job. Then you will need pliers for adding your clasp to your bracelet. And then you will need 4 colors of Delica Miyuki, size 11. So these are the cylinder beads. 3 grams for each color is more than enough. For the earrings, you'll need another 3 grams, but I'll say it in the next tutorial. Then you will need size 3mm or Swarovski crystals. You'll need 13 bicones in total. So they're bicones 3mm and 13 pieces. Now, for some crystals, for some bracelet combos, I've used 2 colors of crystals, as you can see here in the forest version. Whereas in other colors, like in the carnival, I've used only 1 color. So depending on what I've decided, you'll either find only 1 color of Swarovski crystals or 2, but they'll add up to make 13 pieces total. I just liked switching the two colors because I think because the outer outline of each component, small or big, is different, I liked changing up the two colors because I thought it made the whole bracelet pop more. And then you'll need a clasp, so you'll need the jump ring, two smaller jump rings, one big, and then the clasp to close it. And then you'll need really few. You need just about 15 or 20 of micro beads size 15, so round Miyuki beads size 15, to make the clasp on your bracelet. In the kits you'll find more or less a gram, which is all you need practically, and it's more than enough. So now I'll show you how to make your bracelet. And again, today we will be using our giant beads so that you'll be able to see my work just as easily as if you were here in the shop with me. So first things first, cut your string, put your needle on your thread, and then you will have to coat it with a bit of beeswax. So you'll take a bit of the beeswax, put it on the edge of your string coming out from your needle. I create a kind of like little cylinder so that it's completely encased. Here it is. And then I just pull on it a few times for all its length so that it gets coated in the beeswax. This will make the thread not fray and not knot, so it's much easier. If you see that your thread after a while that you're working it starts fraying, then you can coat it again just to be sure. Okay, the length of the thread that I've used is actually a yard. It will be more than enough to make quite a few components, and then you'll just use it up as you go along and cut new thread when you need it. Okay, for my example, I'll show you. I'll start, they're in order of colors, so there are 4 colors, A, B, C, D. We'll start with color A and we'll add 4 beads to my needle. I'll have them go to the end of the thread, leaving more or less a 10-inch thread coat. And then I'll go back through the first bead I've added to the thread. So I'm leaving a 10-inch tail thread. And then I have both strings coming out from the same needle, so from the same bead, I'm sorry. And then we'll go back through all these beads once again to secure the circle that we've just created with the beads. So 1. And as you can see, for those of you who are new to my tutorials, I'm left-handed, so I will be traveling counterclockwise. While if you're right-handed, you'll probably be traveling clockwise. So don't let that confuse you. It's the only difference in between working with the left hand or right hand. But if it confuses you, that's what's going on practically. So I've gone all around my beads and I've come back to the first initial one where my tail is coming out from the other side. And now I'm ready to add the first round of beads. So I'll switch color from A, I'll go to B in this color, which is green. I'll take 1 thread and I'll start adding 1 green bead between each blue bead. So I'll pick it up, go to the next bead, and then take another green bead, again, and then another one. I'm sorry, I didn't actually say that I'm actually making the smaller square right now because the bracelet is made up of 2 different squares, 1 small and 1 medium. Let me get my bracelet to show you. So this is the big and this is the medium. They differ very slightly one from the other, so they'll be constructed on the same base. So we'll start with the smaller one, and here I have it already finished in the big bead so that it's easy to see. So let's get to it. After I finished adding my green beads, I'll end up in the blue bead. And now at the end of each round, because we're working in circular peyote, we have to actually step up. And what step up means is practically passing your needle in the first bead that you've added in each round. So in this case, it's this green bead. so that you've gone up one step and you're ready to add a next circle of beads. So let's add another round. We'll switch color again, so we're going in order. This time it's the sea color, and we'll be adding 3 beads this time all together on the thread, and then we'll go to the next green bead of the round before this. And you see you get a little picot, a little triangle of beads, and that's correct. Then you can add another 3. So the steps for each round are practically the same, at least until we start adding the herringbone stitch, which won't be until the next round. Add another 3. Now with the bigger beads, my work will be a bit bigger, obviously, so it's harder to get this geometric shape that we're trying to get, especially on this step, because we're adding quite a few beads. And then we add the last 3, end up in the last green bead of the round before it. Here you go. We kind of got like a little square right now going on. And we have to step up. Again, we step up only in the first bead added, so only in the first orange of the first 3. There you go, and that's our step up. Now, I want to show you this made with the smaller beads so that you have the comparison. So I'll switch thread. I'll take my actual thread with the size 10 needle, and I'll start adding 4 Delica A color, which is this blue, just like before. Let me focus on the smaller beads. I'm missing a bead, as you can see, so I'll get another 4th bead. Here you go. Perfect. Get it to go to the end of the tail thread. I'll leave my 10 inches. Why isn't it focusing on the beads? Okay. I'll add my 10 inches, I'll leave the 10 inches thread and go back through the first bead added. I got another thread, there you go. And you get the little square. Then we go back through all of the beads in order. And once you're done, you have both threads coming out from the same bead, just like before. Now we add the 4 green beads in between the blue ones. Go. And I've already done the step up in the first green bead. Then I add the 3 orange beads all around. First 3. And you see how the triangle is much smaller because the beads are much smaller. An extra bead there. And then the next green. There you go. And then we add another 3. We go next to the other one. There you go. And then you add another 3. And there you go. And I've already stepped up in the first orange bead, so now we're at the same point we were with the other model. So I'll go back to the bigger model because it's definitely easier to see. So once you've finished your round with the orange beads, which is color C, we have to add the D color, which is this fuchsia, this hot pink. So we add, in this case, we're adding 2 beads together because in the corners we'll start working with the herringbone stitch as I was saying at the start. So you'll add 2 beads and pass in the 3rd bead of the first group of 3. So you're skipping the center one. There you go. And you start getting your herringbone stitch right here. Then once you're on the side of the square, you add just 1 bead and you go to the next group of 3 and you pass only in the first one, just like before. You see that here we're working on peyote. And then we add 2 more together. Skip the central one of this group and go to the 3rd. And then pick up 1 and go to the next one. And then pick 2 and go to the next one. Then pick 1 and go in the first of the 3. Okay, to finish the circle, we have to add the round, 2 beads in the corner, and pass in the 3rd bead. And then the last one, and go through the first bead with which we started the round, the orange one. And then we have to go through the first bead we've added for this round, which will be colored D, to make the step up. And this is another round finish. Let me show you. I'll show you on the smaller version where I've added it already, as you can see. They look pretty similar since I'm using the same kind of colors. And then we're almost done with our first component, the smaller one. So we will be adding the blue beads. For the last round. So since it's the last round, in the corners we won't be adding a herringbone stitch, but we'll add a single bead so that it will make the corner of our square. Then we'll keep working in peyote. As you can see, before there was only 1 bead per side of the square, whereas this time we have to add 2 individual beads, one at a time, like I've just done. You keep going around the square, adding the beads where the need be. So in the corner, again, we'll add 1 at the corner, and then we'll add 1 for each side. We'll add 2 separately, 1 at a time. And we keep going round and round, adding the beads as needed. Go. And this is our component finished. As you can see, in the original version, we have much more space in the center of our component. This is due to the fact that the bigger beads are much bigger, and so they adapt in different ways. The important thing when you're working is not to pull too much, because you want the tension just right so that your square will remain flat. Okay? This is especially important once we'll be making the bigger square. So this is the first square finished. So finish the small one. Now we're going to start making the medium one. I call it medium because there's a larger square that will be made with this next tutorial for the earrings. For the bracelet, you'll need just small and medium. So again, the same base as the small one, you'll make the first 3 rounds as I've made here. So start with the base of the blue, then add the greens, add the orange, and add the pinks, just like you've done with the smaller one. And then the last round of the small one changes since it's not the last one. So I've made my step up, and this is how we do it. Instead of putting 1 bead in the corner like we did with the small one, we'll put 2 beads because we'll continue the herringbone in the corners to be able to enlarge our square. Then we'll add beads to the sides, and in this case they'll grow by 1. So before it was just 1 for the sides, now it will be 2. So we get to the second corner, and again we add 2 beads. And then 2 separately for the sides. Two beads for the sides separately, and 2 beads together for the corners. And you finish off adding the last bead in the side. Try and keep your square as flat as possible. With these bigger beads, it's kind of hard. And then again, remember to step up at the end of the round. So step up in the first bead of the corner of the pair. Here we go. And now this next round that we'll add is actually the last one, and we will use the Delica's B color. So we'll start again, this time, since it's the last one, in the corners we'll add just 1 bead, and then we'll keep adding them to the side. And as before, since they grow by 1, this time there will be 3 instead of 2. And you're working peyote stitch, so it's very simple to see where the beads actually fall. And you add it all around. So we finished the medium square. You can see the difference between the small and the medium. As you can see with the bigger beads, the square tends to fold on itself. You have to try and stop this from happening with your smaller beads. Here is my version with the blue A Delica color added, and now I'll show you how to add the last one on this version as well. So I've stepped up and I'm in the corner, and I'll be adding the green beads all around. So I'll add the corner bead and then 3 single beads to the side. 1, 2, and 3. and add it all around. So this is the component finished in my Delica 11 and in my bigger beads. Now I'll show you how to close the thread and add a bicone to the center. So we'll leave our working thread right now and we'll pass to the tail thread that's coming out from the center of your component. I have here an 8mm bicone that I'm going to use to show you on the bigger model. Now obviously your square will be flat. On these bigger beads it's kind of hard until I've closed the thread to make it sit down flat. So I'm coming out from my middle bead, one of the blue ones. Which one is indifferent? You should be coming out already from one. Then you put on your needle the bicone, and you see that my thread is coming out from this bead on the left side. Then we want to go up through the top bead on top of the other one, exactly in front, from the same side, so from left to right. And then you want to go back through the bicone, creating kind of like a circle with the bicone in the center. And then we're going to go back through this bead from which we started, but we're going to go back through this side, which is the opposite side from which we started. You can see it because there's no thread coming out from that side of the bead. And this way, the bicone is placed right on top of these 4 beads, and it's centered on the 2 beads that we've used to add it to the beadwork. And then you have to move to the outside of the square with your thread to close this working thread. This way you'll see how to close it with a half hitch knot, which is the technique that I use to close all threads when I'm working in beadwork. There we go. I'm coming out from the outer edge. Now I'm going to go under with my needle to get the thread that passes between this green bead and that blue bead. I'll get a circle of thread, a loop, and then I'll go back through the loop with my needle and pull so that the knot forms in between these 2 beads on the thread that passes between, and it will hide in between these 2 beads. Then I'll move a few beads over, not that many because my thread is really short right now, but if you have a longer thread, I'd move to the next side over. Under again, and repeat through the loop and pull. And then you can just move it a few beads over and cut the remaining thread. When you cut the thread, always pull it while you're cutting it so that it's nice and snug. Okay. Now I haven't closed my working thread because I'll need it to sew the 2 components together, because the bracelet is made by stitching these 2 sizes of squares together, one next to the other. So we'll be alternating big and medium and small squares to make the bracelet. In total, you will need 13 squares, which will be 7 medium squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 6 smaller squares to reach the length of 16 centimeters total. If you want a bigger bracelet, you'll just have to add an extra component to the bracelet. And if you want a smaller one, take out one of the components, obviously. So now I'll show you how to sew them together. It's pretty easy. I'll go back with my needle on the working thread that I've left. So I've actually closed all threads on this one because I only need 1 thread to sew them together. What I've done is I actually make first all my smaller ones, and then I make the bigger ones, and as I'm making the big ones, I start stitching the various components together. So first things first, we're coming out from the bigger model from this side bead, and we're actually going to use the beads on the outer side to stitch them together, because if I place the two components close to each other, you can see that they actually fit right next to each other. So we're going to use the 3 green beads of the smaller square and the 2 blue beads of the smaller square to sew them together. So my thread is coming out from this bead, so I have to actually go over and come out from one of the green beads of a side. So which side is indifferent? Here I go. And then I'm gonna place, I usually just put them side by side this way so that I don't get anything stuck together. I'm gonna keep them separate so that you see the tail thread better. So I'm coming out from the green bead, from the green bead from under, and then I'll go in the same direction through the first blue bead of the side of the smaller square. Wait, my thread got stuck. There you go. And then I'll go through the next bead on the side, the green one, and then the next blue one on the other side, on the other square, and then the last green one on the bigger square. And as you can see, my thread path is a zigzag that goes from one side to the other to sew these together. Once I'm done, I can pull, and you'll see that you don't see anymore where the square ended and where the other one began. Now, if you see, this side up is not together, and this side up, they're still not stitched together. So I'm actually gonna go back through, get the pink bead of this square, which we haven't actually passed through or sewed before. Then I'm gonna go back through my path, so I'll recognize it because of the colors of the bead. So blue, green. Going back on top to be able to add and sew together those last two pink and green beads. I'll end up in the green, and then also back through the pink, so turning the direction of my thread and stitching those two together. And now those two components are sewed together perfectly. Let me get out this smaller one so that they just stick together this way and they're perfect. If my bigger square would sit flat, but that's a question of tension and the problem with the bigger beads, because as you can see, my bigger square in the small Delicas is completely flat. It doesn't have that problem. So that's the disadvantage of using huge beads and trying to make the same scheme, because I could actually have this square lying flat if I used my beads differently, but because I'm trying to replicate this square that I'm making, I can't do that. Okay? And this is how we stitch the two components together to make our bracelet. So you keep on going. You will be building on this other side of the smaller square, because my bracelet actually starts with a big square and ends with a big square. Okay? Once you've added all the components together and stitched them together to create your bracelet, we have to add the clasp to both ends. So on this side, as you can see, I've done it already. I've added a clasp using the micro beads and making a loop. So I'll show you on the other side how I've made this. So you will need pliers, clasp, and micro beads. First things off, take the jump ring, open it up, with your pliers, put your clasp in, and close it back up. If your loop remains a bit open like mine, you can put it together by pressing the two sides together. It's a question of control, not of force, because you want to be able to put the two sides to touch each other as much as possible and to be aligned. There you go. Once you have the clasp ready, you can start doing your loop. So you will be on the side of your big component, the one we finished off with, and you have to come out the Delica, which in my case with this color combination is green. The second Delica worked in peyote on the side. So you will bead the corner, the first bead, second bead of the last row or circle. Once your thread is coming out here, you have to add 8 micro beads to your thread. Like that. And then I go back through the same bead my thread is coming out from. You see my thread is coming out from the top of the screen. So I'm going to go back through the bottom of the bead in a loop. And there you go. Then I'm going to pass through all 8 beads again in sequence, exactly as they were added to the thread, so that I can solidify this loop. So make sure you're going through each bead of the loop. And once you've done that, we're going to move to close the thread, just like you've done with each other component. So close your thread and I'll see you soon. So here I am, I've made my loop closed off, and I actually could have just gone through the jump ring that I had added to the class before closing this loop. But since I didn't do it, you open back up the loop, pass it through the loop of beads that you've made, and close it up with the pliers. Now you have to be careful when you're closing the jump ring to not touch the beads making up the loop, otherwise you might break a bead. And there you go, that's my bracelet all done. And that's the end of our tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have comments or questions, you can leave them below by clicking on the comments. Also, make sure to click the bell below to be able to be informed when a new tutorial comes out. I have in program to have the tutorial for the version of the earrings of Ipazia to come out in the next few weeks. So make sure you follow us. You can also follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram as Happy Bead Milano, and you can find us on Facebook as Happy Bead La Fabbrica delle Perline. Once again, you can go to our site to buy the kits for the bracelets. You will find them in all 5 colorways, so with the Starry Night as well, and this one which I've called Mocha because it's the new color for Pantone 2025, and I love it even if it's in neutral colors which are not exactly mine. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Until the next time, see you soon.